I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this is Outside My Window. March is Fraud Prevention Month, and it's an annual campaign that seeks to help you recognize, reject, and report fraud. This year's theme, Tricks of the Trade, What's in a Fraudster's Toolbook, will help Canadians recognize the increasingly sophisticated tricks and tools that scammers use to entrap their victims. The Yarmouth County Senior Safety Program started in 2012 as a partnership between both the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, the municipality of Argyll, Yarmouth Rural RCMP, Yarmouth Town and County Crime Prevention Association, and the Provincial Department of Seniors. Now, this program works with older adults to help keep them in their homes safely for as long as possible, with an education component on scam and crime prevention. This is done through a variety of ways, including, but not limited to, home visits, community presentations, and service navigation. With us today are Senior Safety Coordinators Ashley Rhyno and Peggy Boudreau. Welcome, ladies, back to our podcast.
Thank you for having us.
So, Ashley, could you remind folks at this point what assistance and services that the Senior Safety Program offers?
You did a great job in your intro, Gary, on letting people know, but a lot of what we do is home visits for our seniors. So it's meeting seniors in the comfort of their own home and basically having a conversation with them and seeing what their needs are and how we can help them. It could just be a friendly visit. It could be to go in. Maybe they've fallen victim to a fraud or scam, so it's helping them work through that process. It could be helping them fill out grant paperwork. Really, it can be a variety of things, but our main goal is really to do those home visits and meet people where they're at and where they're comfortable.
And do you find, Ashley, in meeting with them in their own home, that they're a little bit more comfortable talking to you about these sorts of things?
Absolutely. There's always something about being in your own home that makes you that much more comfortable. It does still require us to, build their trust and build a relationship with them and work with them. And sometimes they won't tell us everything on the first visit or the second visit. Sometimes it's the third or fourth visit before we actually get anything into kind of the nitty gritty of what's happening. But we find that meeting them in their own home is definitely a benefit, and it provides a safety net for them as well.
Ashley, are folks reaching out to you and Peggy at the Senior Safety Program regards to scams? What's it been like? We track these calls, of course, since 2012.
So we have some, but we don't have enough. We know it's happening in the community more than what we're hearing about. So sometimes people don't reach out because they're embarrassed or they're scared or they think they've done something wrong, which they should never have to worry about. They're always free to call us. It's a non-judgment confidential service. So we have had a few reach out, or more commonly we've had, a family member reach out, or the RCMP have let us know, or that aspect. But we know there are more out there that are being affected by frauds and scams that we're not reaching, and those are the ones that we really want to reach because those tend to be the ones that are most vulnerable.
Peggy, are people contacting you folks after they fall victim to a scam, or are they calling you after they've received what they feel is a suspicious call, email, or text? Because these scammers use all forms of communication, don't they?
Yes, they do. Most times we receive them once they've been a victim of the scam, most times. Sometimes, on occasion, the senior themselves would call us and tell us, well, I did this. Is this okay? I think I did something wrong. But most times they are the victim. They're to the stage that they've been frauded of money most times, and so we try to help them as much as possible. A lot of times these people are living alone. They have no family around them or no friends, so they're easily frauded by people or scammed because they're vulnerable and they're staying at home a lot and they have access now because of COVID. They've had access more to computers because they had to. Sometimes just for their banking, they had to do online banking, so they did get the internet installed at their home, and of course the good old Facebook page that people use to contact friends and family, and so there's a lot of fraud and scam that's happening there. So that's where they're they're really calling us about those, and we're getting, and we're getting more and more. I found, I find in my area, I've had a few lately, quite a few.
In looking online, you hear about all the different types of scams, and of course on the Canadian government website and the RCMP website, and they're promoting the different types of scams and to be on the lookout for them. But in our area, are there particular types of scams that seem to be a little bit more prevalent with folks in our area, or is it really a mixed bag?
I would say it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We see a lot of gift card scams. So go buy, $500 in prepaid visas or iTunes cards or, some form of a gift card. We've seen a lot of romance scams, and a lot of and I don't know if you've been on Facebook lately, but I probably can scroll through Facebook and on any given day probably come across 3 or 4 scams posts, whether it be, somebody selling something or a dog lost or an apartment available or, a rent to own or whatever. Those are some of our most common.
The phone scams are some because of our senior population. The phone is one of the main ones that whether it be your bank, the bank that's calling, or falsely, and whoever's calling them, and of course they believe them. Their bank is calling them, so they're a little, on edge. The Facebook friendship part is a big one, I find. I've gone through a few of those that they've asked people to be friends, and then they're asking for money, and then they're asking for gift cards, like Ashley said. So that's, between the phone and internet is the main ones that people are getting scammed around here.
Do you think that, it's really putting people into a position where they're not going to answer the phone and not trust anything?
Yep. It is.
The short answer is yes. That's right.
Exactly. I did a presentation yesterday on frauds and scams to a group of about 70 people of older adults, and that's one of the things that I try to tell them is don't trust anyone, because it's scary out there. There's a lot of things going on that you don't realize. So there was a lot of questions. It was a good way to get in contact with the people and talk about what's out there.
Well, and I think it's really important to understand, what sort of method of communication, the banks are going to use, what sort of method of communication the Canada Revenue Agency is going to use. And I think they've adopted a bit of a communication strategy on their end to make sure people understand, how they would communicate with people and what's acceptable and what's not. But, not everybody's necessarily, getting that if you're not scrolling through the internet and reading news from a reliable source or hitting their websites or the like. So from your perspective, what's been the most effective way for you to communicate with people in en masse? Is it presentations like you were at yesterday, or is it social media posts? What's been working?
It's all that face-to-face contact when you're talking about older adults. A lot of them aren't on Facebook or the social media world. I mean, some are, but not a lot. But it's that face-to-face contact. It's the old the newspaper world, the the flyers, the Lobster Bay, the municipal newsletters that go out. It's things like that that allow us to reach a larger group of people. But it's really those face-to-face presentations that really.
Oh, yes, definitely. And the home visits, of course, and the word gets around that way. And seniors use their phone like more than we do, I guess. They use the phone and they talk. They like to talk. It's not texting or all that. So, yeah, it's hard to get the word out there, but by doing these presentations and trying to get that out, it's a good way. It was a good turnout yesterday, and I think they really enjoyed it. So we're going to do some more.
I mean, we're talking about seniors and senior safety just because that's, a segment of the population that seems to be a bigger target for some of these scammers. But, it's certainly not limited to older folks. A lot of these types of tactics do net a younger crowd.
And the group of seniors that we were dealing with yesterday is what we call, or I call, the younger seniors, the ones that are more active, that go out, to do these to these presentations and stuff. So it's that age group that are on the internet and are, have cell phones or whatever and have Facebook and all that. So that group specific. The older ones that are at home that don't have internet, most times those ones, I haven't had a lot of those, but there are a few of them that get, scammed on the phone, mostly for visas and stuff like that. That's what I've seen.
And I think you have to think of the type of the scam that you're dealing with, like, and what generation or what age that scam is gonna hit. So the Facebook scams, like those marketplace, you're probably looking at a younger generation, whereas the phone scams, you might see an older generation because they tend to have those landlines, and they're vulnerable. I don't, nobody's immune to being scammed by any means, but I think there's different scams to certainly target different groups, but that doesn't mean, a phone scam won't get a young person, or a Facebook scam won't get an older person. Like but I think the methods they use just really cater to all generations and all ages.
And certainly, in appealing to the younger crowd that may be listening to our podcast, and that, check in on your parents, check in on your aunts and your uncles and other seniors that may be in your family network or your friend network, that, it's okay to talk about that kind of stuff. If don't be embarrassed to say that you've had a suspicious call and maybe you gave out a little too much or whatever, so that you can try to take appropriate action.
Absolutely.
That's right. Yeah. We need all the help that we can get to, to help solve these problems. If they have connections, definitely, it would be a great way to get to the seniors, to help them out, for sure.
These scammers, criminals, are very insidious in their methods. I mean, they use fear and intimidation. Can you elaborate on that a bit, and how nasty these people are?
They can, and they do, and that speaks to, one of their tools in their toolbox is urgency, and that it needs to be done now, and it has to be done, because if it doesn't happen, then XYZ happens, and they're very good talkers. They can really, really talk about that urgency to it, and that it almost puts your adrenaline up. You get that, I have to do this, that panic that it needs to be done, and we lose that rational thinking part where it's, we almost forget to step back and think about it. Exactly. Or they toy on that emotional side of that person. So, if you're talking to an older lady, maybe they're calling her mom, and their kids don't call them on a regular basis. So it feels nice to be called mom, or, if it's a romance scam, they're wooing them and they're telling them how much they love them and they can't wait to meet them. And, you know, here they're talking to Bob, who lives in Jamaica, and they're probably never going to meet Bob, but Bob's getting all their money. So those tactics are really good, and it puts us in that heightened state of awareness, and it gets our heart pumping, and you know, we have to do this. It's the right thing to do, and when in reality we really need to step back and say, does this make logical sense? Like, is what they're asking and what's happening, you know, have I met this person? Do I know this person on a personal level? Like, so many different things that we really need to step back for. But when they put in that intimidation factor and they use those scare tactics, it's really hard to step away from that, because we're people pleasers. We want to make people happy. So it's kind of going against what we know and have been taught.
When you pit emotions versus logic, obviously sometimes the emotions are going to win.
Of course.
Absolutely.
And I think, you know, when we look at these, especially like the gift card scams, because they seem to be the more prevalent, you know, in the marketplace areas, especially in things where, you want to buy the couch, well, you need to send me a gift card or an Apple card instead of cash or whatever, right? Because it's not traceable and long gone by the time you figure out that that's a bad thing. You know, there's a certain list of red flags that people should be, you know, on the lookout for. Maybe if you can touch on a few of those, that might help some folks.
Yeah, well, the red flags in the cases that I've dealt with in the past here, the red flags, they can be there, but there's a lot of dementia with the people that they are trying to get to. So the dementia and the red flag sometimes doesn't work together. So they believe things that these people are telling them, and it's hard to tell them that it's not true. Like, you have to really, really, you know, sit down face to face and face this person that you say it is not true. So it's hard with those situations. Then the regular people or the other people that get scammed, I mean, we tell them, don't accept anything from someone that you don't know, if you don't know them. If they're calling you on the phone and saying that this is what so-and-so and you don't know them, don't give them any information. Take their phone number, ask for their phone number, and say I'll call you back, because they won't usually give you a phone number, or they'll give you one, but it's not a working one. So the phone number part, is a big thing through the phone. Like, it's a red flag. If you don't know the person, you've never heard of them, and if they're telling you that you're going to win money or this is the way to do it, it doesn't usually work that way.
Besides the intimidation and fear and all of that, particularly with phone scams, they don't give people time, and Quinn mentioned this when he and I were chatting earlier, they don't give people time to think. They're hammering at them and, look, you got to do this right now or something bad's going to happen.
Yeah, they don't. No, they're pressured. They're intimidating. They are. And of course, when you answer a phone, usually it's just a friendly somebody that knows your phone number or whatever. So some of the older population might not get it, that, this person's calling me and they're telling me this.
And sometimes they're calling at a inconvenient time, which means they're calling you at 6 a.m. and you're still half asleep. And they're telling you that your credit card's been compromised and you need to do this and you need to give them your credit card number and all that. And really, a credit card company is not going to do that. But at 6 a.m. when you're half asleep and you've just been woken up out of a sound sleep, you're not thinking about that.
Right. And we're telling them don't answer the phone. If you don't know who they are, don't answer the phone. But there's we talked about this yesterday. a lot of people have unknown numbers when you call. Like for us, when we call you, it's an unknown number. It's coming from there. So
Yeah,
no
the doctor's
doctors have,
office is the same way.
yeah,
A lot of times they'll say, well, we're going to call you from the hospital, but it's going to come up as unknown number.
that's right.
I think twice. I mean, my cell phone is a work phone as well, but it's not published anywhere. So if I'm getting a call from a number I don't recognize or anything along that line, it's going to be,
Yep.
do I
Yeah.
answer it? Because if it's important, they'll leave a message.
That's right,
That
and
is
that's
right.
what we said. Yep, for sure. Yeah.
And then you can always call them back. I mean, I certainly would feel a whole lot safer calling somebody back or calling a number back than taking the call to start with.
But if they're calling you at 2 a.m, usually if your phone rings at 2 a.m, it's an emergency. You're thinking. I mean, you're sleeping usually, so you're gonna answer your phone regardless.
Yeah, certainly definitely at that hour of the day, you start wondering, all right, what's going on, right?
Exactly. You're gonna automatically answer your phone. So then in turn it upsets that person, and through the night they don't sleep, so that's not good. They have nobody else but to call us sometimes during that time when they get these calls.
It seems every day or every few days there's a new scam. We're talking, today is Wednesday, and just posted on one of the media sites. Scammers tried to rob an Ontario couple, pardon me, of $9,000. They got a call from someone who was claiming to be from the Woodstock, Ontario RCMP. Grandson was in jail and all of this, and they needed money, and you got to send it right away. They didn't fall victim, fortunately, but yeah, how do you keep up with that?
I don't know. Yeah.
That's the long proclaimed grandparents scam,
Yeah.
and it's hard because you love your kids, but you love your grandkids too, and you don't want to see them in jail. So
Yeah, those are hard ones, and it's been going on for a while, that one. So it's not a new one. They just use different tactics sometimes
yeah,
behind it there. Like I said yesterday, these people are smart.
and it's important when you get a phone call like that that's a prime opportunity of taking a minute and stepping back, especially your grandkid's a good kid, they go to school, they've got straight A's, maybe call their parents and see where they're at and what they're doing, because we've seen that where little Jimmy's been home soundly sleeping in bed, and grandma's having a panic because she thinks little Jimmy's in jail, but Jimmy's home in bed, so it's think about that, rationalize that for a second, and just say, what should be my next call? Well, maybe I should call little Jimmy's parents to see where he actually is, or maybe I should call and see if I can get a hold of him, or maybe I should hang up the phone and call the non-emergency RCMP line and have that conversation, or and then they can help you work through that as well.
And this particular scammer told this couple that he couldn't release any information because there was a quote unquote gag order, and that led them to think, yeah, this is something wrong. And again, playing on the emotions. What grandparent wouldn't be concerned about their grandchild in some kind of difficulty?
Absolutely, and I hope that if those calls need to be made, they're using words different from gag order.
Yeah, that's right.
And their language, like sometimes their language, if somebody's calling and proclaiming to be from a professional organization, think about the language they're using, and if it's appropriate, or if it's if they're swearing at you, or they're getting mad and agitated. Chances are somebody from a professional organization is not going to do that, because if they did that, they would be fired.
Again, back to the emotion versus logic scenario. I know, from a common sense perspective, people can take a step back and say, "Oh, wow, that's a red flag. That's a red flag. That's a red flag." But when you're in the heat of the moment of it, and they're on the other end of the phone and they're putting the pressure on you, it's easy to push that common sense aside and and act with your heart instead. And I think that just, epitomizes the fact of, don't feel, embarrassed to talk to somebody about this. Don't feel, intimidated by the subject matter or the fact that, oh, geez, I shouldn't have fallen for that. People fall for this stuff all the time. That's the reason we're talking, is to try to prevent people from doing that. But if you have, been a victim of this sort of thing, you need to reach out. You need to talk to somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What's been your sense about how much goes unreported? I mean, certainly we're going to speak with Sergeant Joyce later on in the show, but how much of those statistics that he's going to talk about are just the tip of the iceberg?
I would say the percentage is high. Yeah, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and I think the percentage that's not reported is probably, my guess would be at least 50%, if not more. That's my guess.
And I know when you talk percentages, it's kind of distracting a little bit, but people say, "Oh, this is on the rise. This is on the rise." Is it really, or is it just a matter that people are starting to report it a little bit more? Do you really think that maybe some of these sort of scams are on the rise, or do you think it's just a matter of the reporting?
I think it's both. Myself, I think it's both. It's both.
And
both are on the rise.
I would agree with that, and I would say that education is power, right? So the more we educate people, and the more they come to understand the ways and the workings of scammers, the more creative and efficient the scammers have to get, because people are starting to get smarter. And I shouldn't say starting to get smarter, but they're starting to understand, their ways and how they're working. So they constantly have to be creative and thinking up of new ways and new materials and how it's going to work. But I think, the education piece, and as people become more educated, you're really seeing people being willing to speak up. But like anything, it takes time, and it takes, it takes a lot of courage for a person to come forward, because nobody wants to admit that they were being scammed. But I can guarantee you, whether it be, a friend, family member, neighbor, we probably all know somebody who's fallen victim to scam or been close to being scammed. Nobody's immune to it. If you have a cell phone or you have a phone, chances are you've had at least one scam call. And if you haven't, let me know your trick.
Exactly.
Some of these scams translate well into the corporate world as well, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Especially email scams. I mean, I don't know how many times I check my junk folder and it's from, I've been offered, $50 million because I've won somebody's estate, or they're trying to duplicate a CAO's email, or they're trying to, change somebody's payroll information, or they're trying to, the corporate world also not immune by any means.
And plus these people, these scammers, what they do is they're always on it. They're always checking the websites and checking and finding people and finding contact information. And I think that's a lot of it is, it's out there on the web, and the scammers are accessing it, and that's a way that they get our information. So we are trying to tell people, don't put any information, your personal information on anything. Don't add it to your Facebook site or anything like that. So that's what we're trying to push that message to people. Don't give any information out.
Well, certainly. I mean, social media is a bit of a double-edged sword in that regard. It does help you keep communicating with other people in connection, but the way in which a lot of these scammers are gleaning the information that they're looking for, even on the professional sites. I'm on LinkedIn for my work, but part of my LinkedIn includes where I've worked, what my role is, what my responsibilities are. That can help a scammer use that when it comes to the corporate side of the business, when in trying to reach out and scam me internally for my work. But from a personal side, stuff that seems innocuous. Oh, what was the number one song when you were 10 years old? I mean,
Yeah.
that gives people a rough idea what year you were born. You know, what was your first car? Okay, well, working backwards, you were 16, chances are, when you got your first car. Let's work backward. No, now I know what year maybe you were born in and stuff. All of these seemingly innocuous surveys and chat type scenarios for people to chime in on, all you're doing is feeding these scammers one way or another with little bits. Favorite cat or favorite pet or first pet or whatever. Those are all security questions. And here you are, and they got thousands of responses from people. It's unreal.
And we really, it's so innocent in doing those things, and but it's just not. We have no secrets anymore because we have a cyber world. So it's, have you ever Googled yourself? Put in your your name and Googled and seen what comes up. Chances are you're going to probably find a picture of yourself. You're going to find some, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your whatever. Like, those are all things that give key pieces of information that a scammer has equal access to. He doesn't care what Ashley Rhyno or Joey Smith or Peggy Boudreau he's talking to. He just wants one of you that's going to fall victim to a scam.
And also, you see, quite often now, I notice on Facebook that someone will have a post that they'll assign to, a commonly used public forum, a yard sale or whatever, and they'll have a picture of a sad-looking puppy or cat, and saying, "Hey, if this is yours," and if you just click on the original poster, you can pretty well tell it's a scam. So, I mean, they're working constantly to just draw people in, aren't they?
It's more and more every day on those things. Yes, they're there. They're working at it.
And those sad puppy eyes get me almost every time.
Back to the emotional versus common logic.
That's right.
Right. Speaking of somebody who has a puppy that has the sad puppy eyes, so they get me every time.
Yes, I totally understand.
The point that you were making earlier about corporate scams, kind of underlines the fact that, as we were talking earlier, people should not be embarrassed. It's not just seniors that are scammed. It is, just big, medium-sized corporations. Some municipal units have been scammed out of a lot of money. So, again, let's reinforce that point. Don't be embarrassed, because anybody can and has been a victim.
You've worked hard for your money. You've worked hard. Don't give it away to people who don't deserve it. And if you do, let's talk about it. Like I said, it's a confidential, judgment-free zone. We're going to come in, we're going to have a chat, we're going to see what we can do to kind of help you understand what's happening and go from there.
Ashley, would you talk more about other forms of senior abuse?
So there's lots. I mean, there's the physical abuse, there's the emotional abuse, there's neglect, there's financial abuse, there's tons. There's the violations of somebody's rights and freedoms. It really, we talk about it as senior abuse, but it's just like an adult can be abused or a child can be abused, so can a senior. Those ways really go hand in hand, and I think there's no particular one that stands out. They're at risk for all of them, whether it be domestic abuse or physical or sexual. The risk is there for all of them, and I think sometimes we fall into the rut of because seniors are older, they don't necessarily get abused, but seniors are vulnerable, so they absolutely do get abused. And I think we can't forget that, and there's an education piece that needs to happen with that as well. And I think sometimes it's because they're older, it can be harder for them to come to come forward to talk about that, or it even being witnessed as abuse or seen as abuse. So, they are not immune to it, and it's a real tragic part of our society and what happens. And I think some of the best advice I've been given in my professional career is, just because you treat your parents well doesn't mean that the people you're encountering with are going to treat their parents well. And it's just a sad reality of what we see every day, that is exactly the case. I would do for my parents whatever they needed, but we don't always see that with other groups, or seniors don't always get that same treatment. So it's definitely there, and definitely something to bring awareness about, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, our seniors, our older seniors, because I like the term you used, younger seniors. So, well, I'll identify with that. But our older, our older seniors grew up in a different time where, everyone kind of looked after each other and trusted. Everyone never locked their doors, and things have changed, and it's hard for people to adapt and realize that the world isn't as nice perhaps as it used to be.
That's right.
That's right.
That's what I try to get across to my seniors. Basically, it's not the same as when you were growing up. The communities have changed. There's different people living here. There's people that have moved in. That before you knew everyone, you knew your people that lived around you. Now a lot of them say to me, I don't even know they're my neighbors anymore. So, and that's not the case. Yeah, that wasn't the case years ago, and not that many years ago, because I remember myself living in the community and knowing everyone. Now I go to that community, I don't know anyone, just a few. So yeah, it's and it makes the seniors are vulnerable, like we said. We continue saying that, and they are because they depend on everybody. Most times they depend on people to help them out, whether it be transportation or whatever. Like they need people around them that can support them and and help them.
So if folks need or would like to contact the Yarmouth Senior Safety Program, how can they do that?
Okay, you can call the number, which is 902-881-4099. That's our office number. Or you can email us at, mine is Peggy Boudreau at monargyle.com.
And mine is Ashley at district.yarmouth.ns.ca. And they're also welcome to, on the off chance that we're not on the road, they're welcome to pop into the Royal RCMP detachment on Stars Road if they'd like to chat with us. We do work on the road a lot, but the ladies at the front desk are absolutely wonderful, and they'll be sure to get their information to us.
And also there is the number for the RCMP here, that's the non-emergency number for the front desk, which is 902-742-9106.
Ashley and Peggy, again, thank you so much. It's always very interesting. We learn so much, and you're one of our most popular podcasts. Thank you again.
Wow.
I think that's the first time I've ever been popular in my life, Gary. Well, thank you so much for having us. It's always a pleasure.
So tune in next week where we're going to have a conversation with Sergeant Andrew Joyce from the RCMP Proceeds of Crime section, and he's going to give us a lot of really great tips and a lot of red flags on how we can avoid getting ourselves into a scam situation.
I'm Gary Nickerson.
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
And this has been Outside My Window.